It begins before sunrise, when the air still carries the chill of night and the Nile moves in its half-sleep, whispering against the reeds. The healer wakes early. She wraps a linen shawl around her shoulders and steps into the half-light, where the river is a mirror of bronze. Somewhere in the distance, a heron lifts its wings, and the slow rhythm of its flight marks the first measure of the day. Her hut smells of honey and herbs. Dried leaves hang in bunches above the door. Mint, willow bark, crushed lotus petals stored in small woven jars. On a low table rests a copper bowl filled with water drawn hours before dawn, when the river was still sacredly cold. There is a patient inside, a boy with a shallow cut across his forearm. She kneels beside him, unwraps the linen dressing, and studies the wound as if reading a story written into his skin. The water she pours runs clear and steady. The boy winces, but the healer's voice is low, rhythmic, half chant, half comfort. She dips her fingers into a small pot of honey, spreads it thinly across the wound, then binds it again with fresh cloth. The smell of resin rises like incense. Outside, the desert winds begin to stir, carrying dust and heat towards the coming day. In Egypt, medicine did not begin in temples or scrolls. It began in gestures like this, quiet, deliberate, precise. The sound of cloth tearing, the glint of sunlight on copper, the touch of water meeting skin. Healing was not mystery, it was a habit, a rhythm as natural as the river's pulse. And yet, behind every simple act of care lay an entire world of understanding, ritual and reason, body and spirit, bound together like threads of linen. That is where we go next. The Egyptians were good at medicine because they watched. They watched everything, the swelling of the river, the changing of the skin, the slow return of breath after fever. Observation was devotion. A healer was not merely a priest or physician, but a listener to the body's language. They learned from the land. When the Nile flooded, fevers rose. When the waters receded, rashes faded. They knew which winds brought cough, which seasons birthed worms, which moons marked childbirth safely. Each sign became a sentence, each symptom a clue. To know the body, they believed, one must first know the world. But medicine was never only physical, it lived within the balance of Ma'at, the order that ruled heaven and earth. Illness was sometimes seen as disturbance in this balance, a shadow cast by neglect or wrongdoing. Thus, the healer began with purification, washing the hands in cold water, burning incense, speaking the name of Thoth, the divine scribe who recorded all knowledge. In that ritual act, the body and spirit were joined again. Yet, beneath the prayers, there was precision. They charted pulse and breath, recorded color and swelling, distinguished between injury and infection. The Ebers papers listed hundreds of remedies, not as vague charms but as recipes measured carefully. Honey, 1 part, grease, 1 part, red ochre, 2 parts, mix and apply. Behind every offering to a god stood the steady logic of experience. The healer's art was both science and ceremony. The prayer suited the mind, the salve soothed the wound. Neither was dismissed, for each completed the other. They believed the gods gave knowledge through practice, not merely inspiration. Thus, every observation, every treatment, was an act of faith as well as intellect. But who were these watchers of life and death? Who held the knowledge, preserved it, and passed it on? To understand Egyptian medicine, we must step into the temples, where healing was taught like scripture, and where the body itself became a sacred text. Within the stone walls of temples, medicine became a discipline. The House of Life, Per Ankh, served as a school, library, and a hospital all in one. Scrolls of papyrus lay rolled in neat bundles, their edges smelling faintly of smoke and ink. Here, young students of healing learned to copy not only words, but the steady rhythm of a healer's hand. The masters taught through example. They showed how to observe wounds in soldiers returning from battle, how to measure swelling, how to feel for warmth that warned of infections. They demonstrated surgery with bronze tools polished to mirror sheen, scalpels, forceps, probes, hooks. Instruments were washed in wine or natron, wrapped in clean linen, and laid out in order like offerings before the patient. Anatomy came through necessity. In embalming home, the boundaries between medicine and mortuary craft blurred. Embalmers knew where arteries ran, where organs rested, how tissues responded to touch. Their sacred work, preparing bodies for the afterlife, revealed the structure of the living. Knowledge passed silently between priest and physician, between death and life. Temples of Imhotep, the architect healer deified as god of medicine, became sanctuaries for the sick. Pilgrims came to sleep in their courtyards, hoping for dreams of healing. Priests walked among them, murmuring incantations, but also examining, diagnosing, treating. Dreams might reveal the cure, but so did pattern and precedent. The Egyptians wove faith and empiricism into one fabric, never torn apart. Training demanded discipline. A young healer might spend years of grinding herbs, preparing bandages, memorizing lists of organs and diseases. They learned to mix honey with grease to prevent decay, to press linen to a wound until bleeding ceased, to distinguish coughs by sound alone. By the time the physician was named Sinu, doctor, his craft was both art and arithmetic, intuition and inventory. Yet, their tools alone do not explain their mastery. Their genius lay also in their earth. What they grew, what they gathered, what they distilled from bark, roots, and resin. For medicine in Egypt was as much as garden as temple, as much fragrance as formula. In courtyards fragrant with drying leaves, the Egyptians found their pharmacy. The land yielded countless medicines: willow bark for pain, garlic for strength, honey for healing, castor oil for cleansing. Each had its season, its scent, its spirit. They ground juniper berries into paste for chest ailment, brewed fenugreek tea for fevers, pressed linseed for poultices that soften swellings. Honey, golden and antibacterial, sealed wounds and fed the skin. Its sweetness was more than flavor, it was preservation. Resin from pine and cedar cleansed infections. Myrrh soothed sore throats. Even natrons, the desert salt that dried bodies for burial, served the living by disinfecting wounds. Prescriptions were written in reverence. To drive out pain of the head, willow, ground and brewed in water of the Nile. To cool the fire in the stomach, dates, figs, and milk of goat. These were not casual recipes but tested remedies, refined over generations. Some included a whisper spell of a gesture to a deity, not superstition but acknowledgement of mystery. The healer worked with all senses. Sight judged color, smell detected rot, taste tested bitterness, touch measured heat. In a world without microscopes, the body itself was the instrument. They listened to breath, watched sweat, counted heartbeats against their own pulse. Diagnosis was intimate. The boundary between healer and patient porous, human. Medicine touched every life. Mothers soothed children with herbal oils. Soldiers returned from campaign with wounds treated by trained hands. Farmers carried poultices to the field. Even animals, cats, oxen, donkeys received care, for their health sustained human life. Egyptian compassion extended beyond species, seeing vitality itself as sacred. Yet, medicine was not only made in still courtyards, it traveled to quarries, to battlefields, to the mouths of workers carving tombs. There, among dust and danger, the healer's craft met its harshest tests. At the edge of the Valley of the Kings, laborers toiled under searing sun. Stone dust clung to their lungs. Chisels slipped and split skin. Beside every work gang stood a small tent, the healer's station. Inside, clay jars of salves, strips of linen, bowls of honey and oil. Each evening, the injured came limping in, and the healer's hand moved swiftly, surely. Broken bones were set with splints made of bark and bandage. Cuts were washed with wine, packed with honey. Fevers were treated with cool compresses of lotus and mint. The healer murmured prayers, yes, but her focus was on the wound, the pulse, the breath. She knew that infection, unseen and swift, was the real demon to banish. In villages, medicine was communal. Neighbors gathered when a birth began or when a fever spread. Midwives, respected and experienced, guided women through labor, cutting umbilical cords with copper blades sterilized in flame, washing newborns with warm water and natron. They sang lullabies that doubled as incantations, weaving comfort into the cry of life. Public health was understood intuitively. Waste was buried outside walls, water drawn from clean currents, food stored in covered jars. Ritual cleanliness, so central to religion, had its medical side. Washing hands, shaving heads, laundering linen. The body was kept pure not only for gods but for survival. Even death was treated as education. Embalmers, through centuries of practice, charted anatomy more precisely than any contemporary culture. They named the brain, the heart, the vessels, the liver, the intestines, each observed, each known. The living benefited from the dead, and the dead were honored by the living. In this reciprocity lay Egypt's quiet brilliance. Still, beneath every procedure and poultice pulsed a deeper philosophy, the belief that healing required harmony between the seen and the unseen, between body and spirit, between day and night. The Egyptians never separated science from soul. To heal was to restore balance not only within flesh but within faith. A doctor might study anatomy by lamplight and then step outside to pray under the stars, believing the same order governed both. They saw the heart as the seat of life, the center of emotion and reason alike. To them, a healthy heart kept the whole body in tune. They read the pulse as a priest reads scripture, discerning patterns that spoke of inner harmony or discord. They knew the brain's form, though not yet its power. They weighed organs, examined fluids, categorized diseases. In every act of cutting and curing, they searched for meaning. Temples of Sekhmet, goddess of both plague and healing, taught that every sickness carried its own antidote, just as the desert burned yet birthed oasis. Illness carried the seed of recovery. Priests of Sekhmet recorded outbreaks, listed symptoms, tracked recovery rates, a proto-epidemiology written in ink and prayer alike. Dreams were diagnostic too. Patients slept within temple courtyards, hoping for divine visitation. But the dreams themselves were observed, catalogued, who saw light, who saw water, who awoke in peace. From these records grew a psychology of sorts, an understanding that the mind influenced the body. Thus, the Egyptians were good at medicine because they saw it whole. No boundary divided remedy from ritual, observation from faith. Healing was the art of joining opposites until balance returned. Their success came not from superstition but from synthesis, from seeing the body as part of a cosmic pattern. And when the day's work was done, when the wounds were and herbs steeped for the next sunrise, Egypt's healers turned toward rest, for even rest was medicine, and night itself was part of the cure. Evening fell slowly over the Nile. Lamps flickered within the healer's home, their flames trembling in clay bowls of oil. The air smelled of smoke and sweet resin. Outside, frogs began their chorus, marking the river's breath beneath the stars. Patients slept on mats, their bandages clean, their bodies cold. The healer moved quietly among them, checking each pulse, each breath. She whispered soft prayers not of desperation but of gratitude, that the gods had lent their guidance, that balance had been restored for another day. Sleep was sacred. The body, still beneath linen, healed in silence. Cuts closed, fevers ebbed, strength returned. The healer knew this rhythm as she knew the rivers, unseen but constant. She washed her own hands, cooled her face with water, and lay down beside her tools. In the half-dark, she thought of all who had come before her, scribes who wrote the papyri, embalmers who mapped the body, priests who spoke to gods, mothers who soothed with songs. Each had added a fragment to the great design of Egyptian medicine. Beyond her walls the desert cold. Stars stretched like hieroglyphs across the sky, writing in light the same truth written in papyrus below. The healer closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new fevers, new cuts, new births. The rhythm would begin again. Observe, cleanse, bind, pray, and rest. Always the same, always renewed. And as the night deepened and the lamps dimmed, Egypt itself seemed to breathe, a living body, endless healing, endless learning. The lamps grow dim, the river still. The healer sleeps beside her copper bowl, hands folded, linen soft against her skin. Outside, the desert wind whispers through papyrus reeds, carrying the scent of honey and herbs. The stars look down on a land that learned, long before us, that medicine is not conquest but care, not domination of nature but conversation with it. The Nile drifts on, patient and eternal. Balance is kept. The world, for a moment, is whole.